Excited to welcome Catarina Coelho this afternoon. Catarina is the head of marketing at CodeBase, and she has over 10 years of experience in building performance-driven marketing strategies in tech, digital, and SaaS. She's a specialist in turning data and insights into scalable growth. In today's session, Catarina is going to discuss all the different ways that you can use AI in marketing. And during the session, we'll hear how it's being applied in marketing today through practical insights, case studies, and also a live demo. So we'll be discussing how you can use AI in content creation, campaign planning, and performance analysis. So by the end of the session today, you should have loads of actionable takeaways that you can start using in your work today. So I'm going to hand you over to Catarina now, and I will see you at the end for the questions. So please do pop your questions in the Q&A if you've got any. And we'll see you soon. Thank you, Catarina.
All right. Hello, everyone. Hope everyone can see my screen now. I feel like we always do this. And thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for Data Lab for having me and doing that lovely intro. Saves me some time trying to introduce myself. I'm going to pop that in full screen. So my name is Catarina. I'm very happy to be the one joining you today to explore how AI can kickstart or simplify your marketing efforts, no matter how little experience you may have. Now, a couple of disclaimers. The first one is that I am not an AI specialist, simply an enthusiast. And the second disclaimer is that this presentation hero image, as well as any other images that you'll see from this point forward, are actually your first example of generative AI. They're also mildly inspired by me, but I'm going to totally leave that up to your interpretation. So, getting started. The plan for today's session is very much to have a little bit of an exploration of the current marketing landscape. What are the main challenges and opportunities that we face as marketeers nowadays? We're then going to try to do a little review of what are the most common AI technologies or terms that you might have come across, and also examples of brands using it effectively. We're then going to do an overview of the most common ways that we're using AI in marketing. I think there's about 12 core applications that we're going to try to run through, and also try to provide like very specific examples or practical examples of each. We're then going to take things live, which can go many different ways, but hopefully it will go very well. So we'll do a little bit of a live demo with 3 specific tools, and then we'll come back to the presentation, go through pros and cons, and then finally key takeaways and questions. So feel free to add those to the Q&A. So goals for the session, I'll be very, very happy if at the end of the session you feel like you understand the basics of AI and its core marketing applications, that you feel like you've had the chance to explore real-world examples of brands using AI to drive success, and that finally that you feel like you've discovered a couple of practical tools, but also strategies to get started. So with that being said, let us get started by letting me paint you a picture of what the current marketing landscape looks like. So we know, we've heard that AI offers game-changing possibilities, but businesses, and especially SMEs and startups, face unique marketing challenges that must be addressed to remain competitive and compliant. The first challenge is information overload. There is just too much data and too little time. And I think this is obviously applicable not just for the consumer, but also for the average marketeer. A consumer is expected to see anything like 4,000 to 10,000 ads daily. So quite a lot and very overwhelming, as you can imagine. But then on the marketing side, we're also completely drowning in data, website metrics, social media metrics, customer interactions, you name it. It's really overwhelming to try and like manually process all of that data. And importantly, to be able to filter out the valuable insights from all of the noise and to make good decisions. Our second challenge is building awareness from scratch. So again, established brands have got recognition, startups and SMEs don't. We're often trying to reach niche B2B audiences, trying to build trust fast, try to stand out on what could be an incredibly noisy market, all sometimes with a very limited budget. It's really hard to cut through without a clear edge or differentiated messaging. The third challenge is rising customer expectations. Today's customers are more demanding than they've ever been, and they truly expect personalized experiences at every interaction and at every stage of the customer journey. Think of how Netflix needs to recommend something that it knows you're going to like, or how Spotify is curating playlists very specifically based on your listening habits. However, customers expect personalization, but they're also increasingly concerned about the use of their personal data. So for marketeers, it's really difficult to strike that balance between personalization whilst remaining compliant. And then finally, staying competitive. Again, we're expected to do more with less, and this is applicable especially in economic times like currently, where teams are being consolidated, budgets are being cut, and we are still expected to deliver results whilst remaining lean, all without the luxury of large teams, tools, or budgets. So I know there's quite a lot of challenges and it can be quite daunting, but the good news is that AI can indeed help us solve some of these challenges, whether that is from streamlining operations all the way to boosting engagement or improving lead generation. They are also becoming more accessible and startup or small business friendly. So let's try to break down the fundamentals of AI, and specifically AI in marketing, and explore how to get started. So what is AI? I'm going to read the definition from IBM because I quite like it and I wouldn't want to butcher it. So AI is the technology that enables computers and machines to simulate human learning, comprehension, problem solving, decision making, creativity, and autonomy. Now, there will be a ton of definitions of AI out there, but one of the things that you'll find is quite common between them is that essentially is the technologies that allow computers to perform tasks that typically would require human intelligence. So that's the key to all of the definitions. And in the context of AI in marketing, all we mean is that we're trying to leverage these intelligence systems to optimize strategies, improve decision making, and create highly personalized customer experiences, all whilst saving time and resources for marketeers. So what are some of the key technologies and terms that you may have come across? And again, I will remind people I'm not an AI specialist, just an enthusiast. But the first key technology that you might have come across is machine learning. So this truly is the backbone of AI, and essentially it's the algorithms that analyze data, identify patterns, and improve decision making. And this is all the systems that essentially enable the systems to learn and improve without explicit programming. So that's really important. One of the examples of this technology that you might have come across without even noticing it is customer segmentation on social media based on behavioral pattern. And it's actually going to be one of the examples that we explore during the demo. The next technology is natural language processing, or NLPs, which is essentially the subset of AI that allows AI to understand and generate human-like text. The best example, and again, one that I'm sure you have definitely used, is everyone's best friend, ChatGPT, or Claude, if you're a Claude fan. The next set of term is, or the technology is, predictive analytics. So that is the analysis of historical data to predict future outcomes. A good example of that is when MailChimp or any other email sending provider will identify the best time to send emails, right? So they will analyze your campaign performance to tell you if you send an email at this time, it is that much more likely to be open. And the final term is generative AI. So this is really just a subset of AI that is focused on content creation. So that could include text, images, audio, or video, and it's based on patterns from data. And again, the example being when I asked Canva to create the hero images for this presentation. So now that we feel like we've had a little bit of the understanding of the basics of AI, let's try and explore a couple of examples of how brands are actually using it in real life. So I've brought you 3 examples, a B2B, a B2C, and a tech startup example. Our B2B example is Grammarly. So Grammarly is very well known in B2C markets. So of course, they've got a very large straight-to-customer tool. And they have this challenge where they wanted to attract more corporate clients. So they've used AI both in their product and in their marketing in the way that they essentially combined what they already had, which was an AI-powered writing assistant, but with a customizable brand voice feature. So for example, when corporates were joining the platform, not only could they be confident that the content being produced was proofread and accessible and read well, but it was actually on brand. And as a result, they increased their B2B signups significantly. And all of the corporate clients actually reported higher productivity as well as better internal comms, all due to the AI-powered insights from Grammarly. Our second example, or B2C example, is Starbucks. So Starbucks actually uses AI in their personalized engine, which is called Deep Brew, which is a particularly good name. So let's take a second to admire that. And essentially how it works is the personalization engine essentially just analyzes all of the customer data, purchase history, behavioral preferences, and uses all of that to send personalized offers and recommend beverages, both in store and online, and a lot of times in real time. And again, I think it's a no-brainer that we can imagine that due to this, Starbucks has seen increased customer retention through these personalized offers, like extremely highly personalized offers, but also just in general growth in sales from targeted promotions. And then finally, our third example is a tech startup example is ClickUp. So if you don't know ClickUp, it's essentially a project management software, and they found themselves in the situation where they were obviously competing with really well-established brands like Trello or Asana, and they wanted to differentiate themselves via their organic positioning. Now, we know that the best way to do so is via SEO, and unfortunately, SEO is an incredibly time-consuming job. So what they ended up doing was they used an AI-powered content optimization tool, which was Surfer SEO, to optimize over 500 SEO articles and produce blog content. And as a result, they saw an 85% increase in blog traffic and organic traffic. But most impressively, they reported a time savings of approximately 3 hours per blog post. So again, if we do the math, that is an incredible time saving and therefore an incredible money saving tactic as well. So now that we've run through a couple of practical examples, I want to make sure that everyone is still with me. So I've got the first of a couple of interactive questions to make sure that everyone is still engaged. And in the absence of a buzzer, I'm going to need you to type down your question on the chat and I can see you. So please do not be shy. Just make sure that you're actually putting an option. So think you know AI. Your first question is, what was the first AI chatbot ever created? Option A, Wall-E. Option B, Eliza. Option C, Alexa. And option D, Parry. Can we see? Okay, we've got Alexa, Parry's. A. Give you a couple more seconds. Right, so if you said Eliza, you'd be absolutely correct. If you said Wall-E, I'm going to say you're probably a Disney enthusiast. If you said C, you're probably giving Amazon a little bit too much credit. If you said D, you'd be almost right because Parry was indeed one of the first chatbots, but not the first one. So sorry, that was a bit of a trick question. But Eliza is actually the first chatbot, and most surprisingly, it was actually created in 1966. So it was created by a computer scientist at MIT, and the way that it worked is it pretty much simulated a Rogerian psychotherapist. So this just means that it essentially would respond to users by reflecting their statements back at them in a way to encourage further conversation. So for example, if a user would say, I am feeling sad, Eliza would respond with, why are you feeling sad? In order to prompt that conversation. And the way that it worked back then is actually not that different from the way it works right now, but of course a lot less sophisticated. And that is, it used pattern matching and scripts to identify keywords and therefore generate responses. So thanks everyone for participating. No prizes for the winners, but the prize is that you're all still here and paying attention to the session, which I appreciate. So we're going to run through the applications. As I said, there's 12 of them. Each set kind of goes down a little bit down the funnel of a customer journey experience. So these 4 ones are a little bit more top level, and the further we go along, the more closer to conversion in theory the applications could actually be used. And as I said, for each one, I'll try to provide a specific example of how you could actually be doing it. So the first application, and one that we've already touched upon, is audience targeting. So AI is really, really useful to identify and target the most relevant audience segments for campaigns, and therefore improve your engagement and conversion rates. Examples of this is, for example, Meta Ads Manager or Facebook Ads Manager with a couple of options. The first one is their target expansion. So essentially, once you put in your target audience, it will automatically try to serve your ads to audiences that are likely to behave like your suggestion, and therefore they're more likely to arrive at people that are more likely to buy from you. The second way that it also uses it is with lookalike audiences. So same thing, if you define define a set of customers, or if you even input that data, it uses AI and algorithms to find other customers that fit that same criteria or that are likely to behave in a similar way. So that's one of the main uses, and one of that we definitely use quite a lot. The second application is one that is not specific to marketing, but I think it's particularly important in go-to-market and in general if you've got like a small company or if you're just starting, which is research and design. So NLPs, or natural language processors, can help create dynamic data-driven personas and even things like analyze competitor strategies and uncover behavioral insights. So for example, you can actually use ChatGPT to help you develop a persona. Now, the caveat is, of course, if you've got the money and the time to do this, the right way to do it, I'm sure you'll know, is of course through user interviews and client interviews. But if you're just getting started and you're just wanting to validate or kickstart a persona, it's a really interesting tool to try and determine, for example, the motivations behind it. So you can say, hey, I believe my target customer is 16-year-old teenagers. I don't know, that's what I came to mind. And you can then ask ChatGPT to say, okay, if this is what I think my customer is, what is it likely to want? What is it likely to need? What are its underlying motivations? And ultimately, you can even help you define a routine. What are they likely to use my product? When would they likely to want this in their daily? And then use those insights to help you plan your campaign and to develop your product. So research and design. The third application is data analysis, and this one is one of my personal favorites, and it very much comes hand in hand with the whole too much data, too little time. And that is the AI really, really helpful at processing large volumes of customer data to extract insights, really importantly, to identify trends, so something that might not be particularly visible to the human eye straight away, and therefore to allow you to make data-driven marketing decisions. Really good examples of this is GA4 or Google Analytics, which has quite a lot of AI functionality built into it now, and for example, can allow you to identify a drop in a particular lead campaign without you having to visit 3,000 reports to be able to surface that information. And the fourth application, again, not one that is exclusive to marketing, but I know it's an absolute time save, like a massive time saver in my case, and that is the administrative tasks. So AI is great at automating those repetitive tasks like scheduling, reporting, data entry, note-taking, and that is particularly important for marketing because it allows you to free up time to do more strategic work. Examples of this: Supernormal to take meeting notes, or Gemini to do your meeting transcripts and follow-up actions, or Zapier automations for creating weekly campaign reports and, for example, sharing them with your whole team without having to do that manually. You literally only have to set up the automation once, and then it will run every week without you having to do anything for it, which, as you can imagine, is very, very useful. So down to the next level of core applications, we've got our content creation and content optimization. These two go hand in hand very much so. And I think it's one of the most obvious applications of AI in marketing at the moment. So on content creation, we of course got the generation of the content itself. So that could be text, images, audio, or video. And for tools, obviously you can use ChatGPT, Midjourney, Canva, but there are genuinely so many other tools out there for the creation of original content. But one of the things, or the ways that I find it to be particularly useful, is that you can also use it to fine-tune it to specific requirements like word count or file size, because it will know in theory the specific channels and the specific platforms that we're trying to reach. You can use it for all sorts of applications: blog posts, social media captions, scripts, email copy, you name it. The world is truly your oyster. But you don't have to only use it for content creation. You can actually use it for content optimization too. So if you want to keep some content creation originally to you, you can actually just use it to get improvements for SEO, like what we've discussed. For accessibility and readability is a really good one. In general, to keep it engaging, so to make sure that your content is engaging. And then it is also incredible for content recycling and tailoring. So let's say in the scenario where you've got limited time and you've just spent a good chunk of time producing a really good long format content piece like a blog post, you can actually use AI to then do your content recycling or content remixing, in which case you can, in theory, get out of, let's say, that one long blog post, you can help it to create, let's say, 3 LinkedIn social media posts along with a feature for a newsletter. And all you had to do was spend the time creating that longer content piece. The next application is personalization. So AI can really help you customize marketing experiences, a lot of the times based on individual customer preferences and behavior. The best examples of this is think when you are shopping and you're going to get recommendations based on your previous shopping experiences, or loyalty programs. So loyalty programs which are incredibly personalized to your individual shopping habits. And a lot of the times where we can experience personalization is actually through email marketing. So again, you can use AI to optimize subject lines, send times, and actually personalize content, or use it for the creation of the dynamic content to improve your email engagement. A lot of tools will have these type of functionalities already built in. So again, examples are MailChimp, which has dynamic subject lines, the optimal send times recommendations, but HubSpot, for example, also has a lot of this capability built in as well. So we're down to the last set of applications. And again, these ones are a little bit further down the line. So some of them might feel like they're too early for you and you wouldn't want to explore it, but hopefully they're still inspirational. And that is media buying. So you currently use AI a lot to automate the process of purchasing and optimizing ad placements in real time and for maximum return on investment. Long gone are the days where you had like junior media buyers like personally hand selecting websites or billboards to advertise on. Currently and nowadays, a lot of it is done through AI, and that is, for example, either automated bidding with Google Ads, for example, or even programmatic display advertising. The next application is lead generation. So again, particularly relevant if you are a B2B business. And that is the opportunity to use AI to identify potential leads, and not only to identify potential leads, but to score them based on their likelihood to convert, really enabling very focused sales efforts. So CRMs like HubSpot or even Salesforce already have a lot of this capability built in as well, including predictive lead scoring. That is done automatically based on intent. But one of the ways that you can also do it is, for example, using chatbots. So you can actually use chatbots to further qualify your leads, so that by the time that you're actually doing that one-to-one outreach, you feel like you're actually achieving people with a very specific level of intent, and that qualification has already been done for you. And speaking of chatbots, brings us to the next set of applications, which is actually customer support. Again, not directly related to marketing, but that has a massive influence, and that is you can obviously use AI-powered chatbots and virtual assistants, which can provide 24/7 customer support and handle common queries. But in the scenario where you don't want to fully automate it, it can still be particularly useful to determine when something needs to be escalated. So a good example is Freshdesk. They've got a virtual assistant that is powered by AI that can kind of handle common customer queries by itself. But in the scenario where you want to keep a human touch, it essentially uses an analysis of keywords and the urgency in the messaging and even the sentiment of the messaging to essentially say this needs to be escalated, and that there would be a required human intervention at that time. And speaking of sentiment, we've got sentiment analysis as our last core application. So a lot of the tools, again, will have these built in already, especially social media tools, but you can absolutely use AI to monitor social media, forums, and communities, not only to analyze conversations, but to actually keep track of either brand, your competitors, or even trend sentiment. An example of this is Sprout Social, which actually allows you to do this within the tool itself, and it can really help you identify trends and notable data insights with their AI-powered analysis. So that's for 12 applications in theory, and I'm going to bring you to the next interactive question. So I hope everyone is still with me. So your next question is actually, what percentage of marketing leaders are already using AI to enhance their customer experience? Your option A is 25%, your option B is 48%, your option C is 75%, and your option D is 91%. Right, I'm seeing quite a lot of different options. Give you a couple more seconds. Right. It said see you in, but I will caveat it by saying that this was actually based on a 2025 report. So I would actually not be surprised if it was a lot closer to D these days. But according to the last Salesforce State of Marketing report, 75% of marketeers were already experimenting with or have fully implemented AI in their operations. So don't get left behind and definitely start exploring it. Even if it is just one of those 12 applications, I'm sure you would find it useful. So with that being said, it is time. We're going to jump to the live section of the session and we're going to do a little bit of a demo. Again, I will caveat it by saying these things can go many different ways. I cannot control the results of it. So we're going to do this together and we're just going to have to be together with the results of it. So as an example, so we've got a little bit of a use case. So we're going to pretend we are a B2B tourism management software company, and we are going to launch a new product. And therefore, we would quite like to do an awareness campaign on Meta to essentially advertise our new software. So the three tools that we're actually going to run through is an example of an LP. So in our case, we're going to do ChatGPT. We're then going to use Canva AI for our asset creation. And then finally, we're going to use Meta Ads Manager to set up our campaign. And I will kind of highlight to you the different AI-powered elements like what we discussed of how they can actually be optimizing your campaigns for you. So we're going to start with ChatGPT and we're going to ask it to please, and I also always say please because I don't want the robots to come for me, create an awareness meta campaign for the launch of a B2B tourism management software. And this is another tip for you. Try to make sure that your prompt is doing as much work as it possibly can so that you don't actually have to reuse it or to refine the questions a million times. So we're going to straight away ask it to please provide multiple headlines and add copy for testing. Right, let's see what it can come up with. So we had already given it the goal, so we want our primary goal to be awareness. We've got a couple of suggestions of target audience, and as I was saying, you can actually then fully develop this into a persona if you wanted to continue asking it questions about motivations and needs and routines. We've got a couple of different creative angles. So again, because I very specifically told it that I wanted to use it for testing, we now have different headline options and primary text variations so that we can actually test all of our assets against each other. Now, if I had loads of time, I would review all of this really carefully. I would select those that I think would be best and refine it manually. But for now, I think this is actually a great place to start. So we've got different primary text variations and a couple of headlines. So let's do our asset creation. So again, we know that we will want to do an awareness meta campaign for... Go. So I'm using Canva AI, and again, I've already predefined that I want to design a social media post. So this is when I meant, obviously, it knows the functionalities of the tool. So we will do something that makes sense ratio-wise and asset-wise and file size side. So we're going to do the same thing. So we want to create a meta campaign for the launch of a B2B tourism management software. Now, this is the bit that always takes a little bit of time. But it will hopefully give us a couple of creative directions. In case you haven't done a lot of marketing before, this is quite best practice to have a couple of different like visual variations and headline variations, because when we are setting up our campaign, you'll know that one of the best ways that you can achieve results is by having dynamic creative. So essentially what Meta will do is we'll do a combination of visual asset with visual headline and primary text and do multiple variations of those in order to improve your performance. So we've got a couple of different visual directions here, which is good. And again, quite of them subjective, but it is pretty impressive that it did it as fast as it did. So I quite like this one. Let's go ahead and use this one. It also gives us the opportunity to test out our different headlines like what discussed. We've got a couple of USPs, so sounds good to me. We're going to go ahead and use that. And I don't actually dislike this headline, so we're just going to go with one of our versions being this one. And let's go with another one of the creative angles I don't know. Sure, one platform, full control. That sounds good enough to me. And let's just replace that. And again, you could very easily then have your brand substituted, change out the copy, change out the USPs. For now, let's go with the MVP of essentially having two different visual assets with just a little bit of variation. Normally, I would also recommend variations of call to actions, but we can also do that on the tool. So for now, that's good enough for me. And I'm just going to download those two assets. And we're going to jump onto campaign creation. So this is Meta or Facebook ads, which will obviously control both Facebook and Instagram. And we're going to go ahead and create our awareness campaign, which we know will be good for reach, brand awareness, and video views, which in our case, we just want to get the most reach for our product launch. So we're going to go with that. We're going to call it software launch, and that's good enough for me. And this is actually your first example of AI or algorithm and machine learning doing the job for you, which is the Advantage Plus campaign budget. So rather than manually having to define how much money you want to spend per ad set, you can actually just give it a lifetime or daily budget. And then Meta is actually going to distribute that money in order to get better results. So for example, if ad set A is performing particularly well, it is likely to put more money behind that ad so that ad goes further rather than splitting that budget evenly between the two ad sets. So let's say in this case, we totally trust Meta to automatically distribute our budget, which we'll say is 300 quid for a month. So we'll let them do that hard job for us. And we don't want to do A/B testing. We're going to do dynamic testing instead. So that's all good. Our performance goal in this case is to maximize the reach of ads. I'm going to choose that to be the CodeBase page. We can definitely, if you know that it's going to be an audience that is likely to be very niche, you definitely want to cap it at probably a little bit, even less, probably like one time every 7 days. But if not, we're going to totally take that. We are going to have dynamic creative. So as I said, we're going to test out all of our multiple variations of headlines and primary text and even images. And then we're going to leave it for 1 month. And then we're going to use Advantage Plus audience. So that's the other example that I was discussing. So we want it to, and again, you'll remember that actually ChatGPT already had given us a couple of target audience suggestions. So we're definitely going to go with tourism. There's got to be something with, hospitality management studies. That sounds good to me. There's obviously tourism as an interest as well and an industry. And essentially what the machine learning / AI is doing in this case is you will define, well, it's exactly what the description says. We'll define essentially an audience, and then Facebook will automatically show ads to people that are likely to respond. So they will try to match your targeting suggestions with people that are similar when it's likely to improve performance. So you can actually continue building out your targeting as much or as little as you want. In this case, we've got it good enough with additional interests and the interest in the industry. And then the other interesting way is kind of similar to media buying, which is the Advantage Plus placements. Again, rather than manually defining in what placements you want your ad to choose, you can let Meta to do that for you. And again, it is in their best interest to make sure that your ads are being shown on the placements where they're likely to perform the best. So that's another little example of how you can be letting the tool or AI doing the job for you. So that's all good. Setting the actual ad so we can totally have our images. So I'm going to go ahead and get the 2 images that we had gotten from Canva. So that's the Facebook posts. We're going to pop those 2 in there. And it's loading. There you go. You can also do the second one, which had this second call to action. There we go. We'll want to have these 2 images. And then we would put in all of our variations of primary text. So let's just, for the sake of the demo, I'm even going to go with product name, literally try a couple of these. So let's say this one, we could do a different angle. could also test like some that are slightly lengthier options, some that are slightly smaller, and some that would, for example, target different USPs of the tool. The idea would be the more options you can give it, the more options you're creating for dynamic content. And same thing for the headline. So you would likely put in a couple of different variations. And again, probably a couple of them from different points of view. So you could have run your tour smarter, another one that is about scaling, another one about store operators, why not? And so on. You get the gist of it. You'll just be putting in as many variations as you possibly can. And then you can also test different calls to action, which I would totally recommend. So you can have a learn more, a look now, let's say, and a contact us. Yeah, get quote, why not? And as you can see, with us essentially only setting up one ad, you would be getting, I don't know, I don't want to do the math, but quite a lot of different possible variations of creative between them. And I think in less than 10 minutes, in theory, we have created a launch awareness campaign on Meta for a product launch. And it actually worked out fairly well. So I'm going to take us back to the presentation where we can actually talk about the pros and cons of using AI for marketing. So then I'll put us in full screen again. So pros and cons. Again, pro, I think we've talked about it enough for you to believe me that absolutely it can boost your ROI. It can optimize campaigns in real time. It can help you cut costs and therefore boost your profits. It undoubtedly increases efficiency. Again, as the example of the demo showed, in very little time, you can create content and original content, and therefore it allows you to create quick launches, whether that is quick product launches, campaign launches, you name it. It also undoubtedly enhances customer experience, whether that is through personalized recommendations or through personalization in the different stages of the customer journey. It enables data-driven decisions, which allows for better targeting and in specific, but in general to allow for a better strategy. And finally, and particularly important if you're a small business or a startup, it allows us to scale efforts without adding significant costs or resources. But of course, along with pros comes the cons, and the main, or like one of the first cons is actually the risk of inaccurate content without human review. Again, I've barely done any proofreading to the stuff that ChatGPT had suggested, but of course that's the main thing. I highly recommend you to review whatever content is actually done and suggested so that you've got that opportunity to do a little bit of quality assurance and make sure that it makes sense. One of the ways that you can also do this is by asking it for its source. So if you're using it to actually produce data or to analyze data, make sure that you're asking it what's the source and that you can validate that. The second con is actually to do with privacy concerns. So again, due to the extensive data usage, it does raise a lot of concerns around the use of data and privacy. So do try to not use personal data, and as much as possible to not use business sensitive data unless, again, you've got the right safeguards in place and that, for example, you've got the right account for the tools. The next challenge is copyright issues. It's a little bit twofold, not only on the copyright issues that arise from AI generated content in general, but actually to do with content similarity. So again, let's say one of you also has a very general B2B tourism management software company, and you would have done exactly what we have done together in this demo, then we would have arrived at copy that looked very similar. We would have arrived at visual assets that looked very similar, and that is going to be noticeable. And that actually brings me to the next point is, from a consumer perspective, that visual similarity in what is already a very noisy market will start to have impact on hard to measure non-quantifiable KPIs like brand perception. So again, if your consumers or prospective customers can see that you're using AI or that your content actually looks exactly the same as your competitor, will that likely start to negatively impact your brand perception? Very, very likely. And then finally, it does rely on quality data for accurate results and insights. So it truly is only as good as the data that you can provide it. So With that being said, if there are three things that I would like you to take away from this session, the first one is that it does drive efficiency and personalization. That's a no-brainer. It helps marketeers save time, improve customer experiences, and make data-driven decisions for greater ROI. It is a game changer, however, it is not a magic fix. You need to leverage AI for efficiency and personalization, but you must balance its use with human oversight to maintain quality and creativity. And then finally, success in AI marketing lies precisely in harnessing its potential whilst addressing privacy concerns, copyright, and to be able to continue measure those complex KPIs like we've talked about. So that brings me to the end of the session. I hope you found it useful. I have plenty of other resources that you can go back and explore the full reading list. And I've also tried really hard to note down the tools as I was going through the presentation. So again, you can go and explore them, but there are so many more out there that you're very welcome to go and explore. But if not, and if that's very intimidating, at least you've got a little bit of a list to get you started here. So thank you very much. And I'd like to see what questions we've got.
Thank you very much. That was super interesting, Catarina. Particularly at the beginning, the 12 applications of AI. I know that I use it for some of those, but admittedly, there's quite a few of the applications in your list that I could probably make more of. So we've got just about 10 minutes, just under 10 minutes for some questions, and we've had quite a few questions coming in already. Quite a few questions around skills and skills development, but we've had a couple that have come in specifically around how you use AI in the team at CodeBase, and kind of some questions around that. So the first one has come in is asking, within the team at CodeBase, are there expectations that your team uses AI in their workforce and in their workflow? Sorry, and if so, do you have a structured process for training and development within the team?
Yes, definitely. It's definitely something that we encourage the team to use. It's definitely a very large part of our strategy that we're trying as much as possible to platformify what we do. And a lot of it is due to AI and efficiencies that we're creating using AI. The different teams will have their own strategies for using AI. So for example, within our team, we've got a very specific use of AI in marketing, and we'll have a strategy for that. But I'm also very lucky to have a significant team. So again, I'm not writing solo. So I've got a very talented group of marketing managers and marketing execs that work with me. So I feel like a lot of these tools, like for example, content creation, if you're a small team, you would be much more likely to use, whereas I'm very lucky to have humans that can actually do that job for me and very well. So it's definitely something that we are especially, for example, the administrative and the repetitive tasks is a no-brainer. So that one is the ones that the business is very much prompting us to do. And then other applications will be specific to the teams. I still encourage my team to use it. Actually, one of the best examples is on the content remixing, like how I was describing. We do podcasts, and we will use AI a lot to transcribe our podcasts and to automatically suggest different content angles out of that, for example, that long format piece. So I hope
That's
that
something that we could definitely use. So I might pick your brains about that specific aspect afterwards. And then kind of continuing with the sort of the theme around what you do within CodeBase. Ollie's asking, I guess. So Ollie said every platform that he uses at the moment has an AI feature that has been added somewhat recently, and he's somewhat skeptical about how useful a lot of them are. At CodeBase, how do you assess which AI tools are worth using and which ones are maybe not quite worth your time?
I would say actually that it's exactly what Ollie's saying. A lot of the tools or the AI that we are using is on tools that we were already using before. So the best examples is HubSpot. We use HubSpot as our main CRM. So we have naturally ended up using a lot of the AI functionality built in within the tool. So both for lead generation and business development, but also for email. So like what I was saying, personalized subject lines to use it for optimum sending times. So one of the main ways is essentially we're just using the inbuilt capabilities on the tools that we were using before. Another great example is Gemini. So we obviously were already a Google Suite company. So it was very easy for the company to start using Gemini to transcribe our meetings, which has been a game changer for us, truly, in terms of keeping people accountable and making sure that meetings are actually actionable. But then any other new tools is very much an assessment of does it fit our strategy? Does it fit within our budget, very importantly? And do that, striking that balance of how much return am I going to be able to get from these tools? So we, for example, pay for ChatGPT because, again, we want to be able to use it to the best of our abilities. And therefore, sometimes that might mean putting some sensitive data that otherwise we wouldn't want to have it out in the public. So that one is one of the examples where we would likely explore a tool where maybe we didn't use before, but that we find it a benefit to use.
Right, thank you. And then Alex is asking, within your team, have you found any, well, I guess to begin with, have you had any resistance from anyone in the team who's maybe a little bit less enthusiastic about using AI in their work? And if so, have you found any ways that you've kind of handled the pushback from people who are maybe a little bit worried that the AI might replace them eventually?
Yeah, I think it has to do with the fact that I've got a larger team. So people are fairly confident. I have resource that will allow me to do copywriting, so I don't have to use AI for that. I do have resource for the creation of design and original design assets, in which case, again, the team is actually so pro AI because it helps them do their job without, again, fearing that their job is going to be taken away from them. But in the scenario where it is a smaller team, I could totally see that being the impact. So again, for me, it's about striking the balance and to be able to acknowledge that there is actually a lot of challenges with using AI and that you will always have to retain some level of human intervention if you want to ensure the quality, the accuracy, and even, again, the uniqueness of the content. Can you imagine a world where every single marketing asset you see was actually produced by AI? I could imagine it, but it wouldn't be a very nice one, would it?
Well, that takes us nicely onto the next question, which is from an anonymous attendee who's asking that they appreciate that obviously for the purposes of the demo that you went through at the end there, that you did that quite quickly and we didn't really kind of analyze the outputs from ChatGPT. But in real life, if you were kind of creating a campaign or creating some content for your marketing, how much time would you take to sort of tailor the outputs and kind of um, to kind of assess what had actually been created before you put it out into the public?
100%. A lot is the answer. So again, we still do the majority of our campaign planning without ChatGPT. We use it quite a lot for refining things and in general, we use it mostly for content optimization over content creation. So even if we are getting a couple of suggestions of headlines, the majority of the times they're being created by us and then maybe second check, like we use it as a sense check rather than the original creator. So the answer is still a lot. So we will be planning campaigns. We're making sure that the assets fit in. Again, even from a design perspective, assets are being created from scratch to make sure that they fit in with the campaign goal. We're testing copywriting propositions based on human intervention. And then in general, we're just using ChatGPT for sense checking that. But again, the caveat being I have the resource to do that. If I was writing solo and if I had to do the same thing, I think I would probably spend a lot more time refining things within ChatGPT and actually use it for content creation directly. But still, I highly recommend you would have to spend a significant amount of time proofreading, making sure that it actually matches your brand tone of voice, that it matches what you actually wanted to do, and to then actually be able to implement it.
I guess that also ties into what you were saying there around the pros and cons around making sure that your content doesn't look like everyone else who's used the same
Exactly.
tools. So making sure that you're, making it fit your brand and kind of your brand colors and the tone and things. So we've got time for maybe one or two more questions, and there's a couple have come in around skills specifically. So Jamie's asked, what skills do you think marketing professionals should be focusing on developing at the moment to try and stay relevant over the next sort of 3 to 5 years?
I think definitely the campaign planning and strategy is going to be the biggest ones. So again, I could see smaller jobs like your copywriting and specific tool usage, especially with tools becoming more friendly and accessible these days. I think the days of having to become a very specific SEO specialist or very specific PPC specialist, I think are a little bit past us. So again, I think the skills that you'll have to have are a little bit of the generalist skill set. So you need to have a little bit of understanding of all of the individual elements of marketing, but to be able to tie them together, branding. I think the more and this is coming from a performance marketing person, the more that we're focusing on performance marketing, the more branding is actually going to play a really, really important role. So I would say your strategic thinking, your planning, and your branding is actually going to help you elevate the traditional skills with your SEO, your PPCs, your email marketing, and then provide that as a really strong basis.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. We've unfortunately ran out of time. There are a few questions left in the Q&A that we could maybe send you them in an email.
Mhm.
We could maybe get the responses out to people after the event. But thank you very much for joining us. It's been a really interesting session and full of lots of useful information. So if anybody's watching and you would like to watch back, we've recorded the session. We'll have that up on the Data Labs YouTube channel within the next couple of days. So you'll get an email once that's available. Just to kind of look ahead over the next few weeks, we've got another few sessions taking place under the marketing theme. So on the 18th of February next week, we've got a session around using Claude to create campaigns. We've also got an in-person meetup in Glasgow on the 24th of February at Barclays Eagle Labs, and that's all around kind of real-world applications of AI, in particular in the finance sector. We've also got one of our public sector webinars on the 25th of February, which is looking at how data is being used in marketing to recruit foster carers within the public sector. So still quite a lot coming up this month with regards to marketing. So check them out on the Data Lab community and make sure you register for any of the events you're interested in. Just like to say one last thank you to Catarina for joining us this afternoon, and thanks everybody for joining over your lunch break.
Thank you very much, everyone.
See you, bye bye.